The rookie draft is one of the most important elements in building a dynasty franchise that can sustain long-term dominance. Taking the wrong approach to this part of the game can ruin your team for multiple years. I don't want to see anybody put their teams in that position, so I figured I would lay out my best practices for how to handle the rookie draft. Let's get started. My first rookie draft strategy tip is to enter the draft with more picks than rounds. Meaning if it's a 4-round draft, you should probably try to have 5 picks coming in. Throughout this episode, you'll notice I refer to rookie draft picks as currency. You want to have as much of it as you can when you enter the rookie draft. This will allow you flexibility when moving around the draft board and acquiring assets, whether it be veterans, more picks, or future picks. While I suggest going into the draft with at least one additional pick, I'm not saying that you have to or even should use them all on rookie selections. And actually, I would suggest that you don't. But if you're building a dynasty that is intent on competing year over year, then you always want to have a plethora of draft capital. My number 2 rookie draft strategy tip is to wait to trade away your draft picks until you're on the clock. Think about this. Your league mate is convinced that prospect X, let's call it, is going to be a stud. He or she has fallen in love with that player during the pre-draft process and cannot wait to finally acquire their first share of that player. Now you're on the clock, and that league mate is sweating it out, hoping that their guy falls down the board to their selection. And the longer that clock ticks, the more anxious and more desperate they become. This is your time to strike. There is no moment where that pick that you're holding right now has more value. You have a desperate manager who wants to get their guy and has an opportunity to trade for the chance to press that draft button. Let's be honest, we'll all admit it, that is a sweet moment when you get to do that. But that's also why that pick holds its most value in that moment. Not at the combine, not during the NFL draft, not the day before your league's rookie draft, and not even after the actual player is selected. It's on the clock, in the moment, when you're going to be able to retrieve the most bang for your buck for that draft pick. My number 3 rookie draft strategy tip is don't trade up. We have to understand the volatility of rookie picks and their hit rates. We all think we know these prospects inside and out. We've gone through our process, whatever that is, and we're convinced that we know best. We all fall victim to this every year. The truth is, though, we really don't know as much about these players as we think we do. We just have to accept that. Whether your process is film grinding, analytics, or a combination, we simply don't know. And that's okay, but we must embrace the variance. That's why more often than not, it is suboptimal to trade up in drafts, thinking that we know a certain player is going to be a hit. We just don't. So why are we giving up precious draft capital to go all in on one guy when in fact we are actually lowering our chances of hitting on that player because we just gave up multiple lottery tickets to move up? The best practice in most cases is to move back within a tier and collect more picks, players, and future picks. Learn to take the emotions out of drafting and operate from a more logic and reasoning perspective, and your long-term results will reflect positively. Of course, as is the case with all of these tips, there are circumstances that warrant a move up. This is not a never ever type of suggestion, but it's a good rule of thumb to live by. My number 4 rookie draft strategy tip is to use early picks on running backs. Of course, this doesn't mean take Kendre Miller over Jackson Smith and Jigba, but in most cases, top-tier running backs should be valued over top-tier wide receivers. It comes down to position scarcity. Elite running backs are harder to come by than high-producing wideouts. And how often do we hear about a wide receiver who is a league winner? Not very often. It's always the running backs who make the difference on title-winning teams. It's no different than why we see running backs go at the beginning of seasonal league drafts. And that position is also generally a safer bet. A running back with good draft capital is basically guaranteed to get plenty of opportunity to fail before a team moves on. Where for a wide receiver, it's much harder for an underperformer to be fantasy relevant because a quarterback can simply not target him. That's why we see more early round wide receivers bust than running backs. Again, I'm not telling you to take this tip literal or to the extreme, but when we have guys similar in value and talent, I always lean running back in rookie drafts. If you're concerned about longevity, I get it. Generally, wide receivers do last longer. But if you know when to get out from a running back, go trade him for a wide receiver. Then you'll really hit the sweet spot in maximizing the value of your dynasty roster at all times. But that's a strategy for another day. My number 5 rookie draft strategy tip is to draft for upside in the later rounds. The early rounds of your rookie drafts are for the safe bets. You don't want to squander a high value selection, so it's important to lean floor over ceiling. But the cost of missing and the hit rates are much lower the later we get into a draft. That's why once we hit round 3, even the late round 2 sometimes, is all about upside. We want to take a shot at the home run. My number 6 rookie draft strategy tip is draft picks are currency. So save it and spend it wisely. As I mentioned earlier, draft picks are the currency of dynasty leagues. They can be used in all sorts of ways, whether it be moving around the draft board, buying veterans, or simply using them at face value to select a prospect. That's why it's important to spend it responsibly. A few misspent draft picks will doom your team for the long run. It's also why you want to collect as many as you can. The more picks you have, the more valuable your franchise is. My number 7 rookie draft strategy tip is to walk out with additional picks for the following year's draft. Building off that last tip, one of my favorite dynasty hacks is to add additional draft picks for future years. That's why I go into every rookie draft with the goal of walking out with at least one more future draft pick than I had going into it. I can do that in a number of ways. I can trade back and acquire a future pick. I could also trade out altogether, maybe my early second for my opponent's future first. Heck, I don't even care if I'm swapping my current 4th rounder for next year's 4th rounder. Just give me something in next year's draft. Doing this, I've set my team up for sustainable success and given it flexibility by adding that precious currency. My number 8 rookie draft strategy tip is to take the best player available. I'm telling you, rookie drafts are not the time for filling needs. There is a time and a place to fill a need. The rookie draft is not that time nor that place. Instead, the rookie draft is to increase the value of your dynasty team. There is no reason to worry about your starting lineup more than a month before the season kicks off. Build a valuable roster instead. There will always be opportunities to trade for a need. And because you drafted for value, you have more in your pocket when it is time to go and make that deal. And my number 9 rookie draft strategy tip is to use our dynasty rankings and resources at yardsperfantasy.com. This one's obvious. Our dynasty rankings are always up to date and present the perfect balance of short and long-term outlooks. Our analysts provide great player analysis and dynasty strategy in the form of articles, podcasts, YouTube videos, TikToks, and on and on and on. And if that's not enough, reach out to us on Discord and we'll be happy to help.